That's the way Indiana Jones ought to look.
This is the difference I was mentioning. They asked me what the difference was between the first movie and the second movie. The difference is I play Indiana Jones. When George and I were in Hawaii and I agreed to direct Raiders, George said that if I did wind up directing the first one, that I would need to direct 3 of them. He said he had 3 stories in mind. It turned out George did not have 3 stories in mind. We had to make up all the other subsequent stories. So it was like 2 weeks after Raiders opened that we knew we were going to have to sit down in the room and figure out what Raiders 2 was going to be.
This is Indiana Jones, the famous archaeologist.
We started out ultimately with saying, well, we had all these sequences from Raiders that we couldn't fit in there.
Raiders of the Lost Ark was too super packed with gags and stunts and set pieces. It's just no movie could hold that much. So certain things carried over, and I always remembered the river rafting scene, which we had written for Raiders, which I saved and kind of bookmarked for another Raiders movie. That went into Temple of Doom. And then we had an entire minecart chase, like a roller coaster ride. That was originally written for Raiders. And so I basically just took it out of Raiders and kept it in a drawer, and then when it came time to figure out set pieces for Temple of Doom, we dusted it off and stuck it in the end of Temple of Doom.
So we took a lot of the good sequences from Raiders and put it in there and then fit the story around it. And this time we hired some writers that I'd worked with on American Graffiti, Bill and Gloria Hike.
George knew about our interest in India. We had traveled in India and we were collecting Indian art and so forth, and said that he and Stephen had decided to set the next in India, and I think that's why he came to us, because he knew we were interested in the country and had some knowledge of it.
And George had one main idea. He said, look, it's going to be a very, very dark film. The way Empire Strikes Back was the dark second act of this first trilogy, he wanted the second indie film to be much darker. So George came up with this idea that it was going to be about the Kali cult and have a lot to do with black magic. And I had never done anything like that before, so I kind of kept nodding my head. Well, if you guys think that's a good idea, sure, I'll go along with it.
The story ended up, for whatever reason, turned a lot darker. I think we decided to go darker. Part of it, I guess, I was going through a divorce at the time and I wasn't in a good mood. And part of it was just, we wanted to do something a little bit more edgy.
Harrison really got into even better shape because he had to have his shirt off for much of the time. So Harrison did a lot of weight training and aerobic training, and he just got himself into peak condition.
That's it. Never mind.
Aren't you going to introduce us?
I looked at a lot of possible indie girls.
This is Willie Scott.
I really wanted to bring Marion back, but George and I discussed it and thought there should be a different Indiana Jones lady in each of the different films. So we started looking for a nightclub singer named Willie Scott. Willie was named after my dog, by the way, because since Indy was named after George's dog, Indiana, and I had a dog named Willie, and then Short Round was the name of Bill and Gloria's dog. So Key was called Short Round. So in that sense, all 3 characters were named after our house pets.
I got a phone call from my agent saying the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark is being cast, and they would love to meet you. And that's not my kind of movie. I was looking at foreign films, and I was looking at little art films, and being a very serious actor studying in Manhattan. But while I said I didn't want to do this movie, of course I did very much want to do this movie, because if I did a movie like this, it would certainly elevate my opportunities to do more movies, and that's really what I wanted to do, was just as many movies as I could. So I prepared and I brought in a lot of props. I like to keep busy because that's one way for me to stay calm and not get too nervous.
Just when my career is starting to pay off, you come along. You stick a knife in my dress, Paris original. I'm in the first ever gunfight with real goddamn bullets, and then you crash an airplane. You crash an airplane. You call yourself a doctor.
And I thought she was absolutely Willie. She wasn't spoiled, and she wasn't that character in real life, but I mean, she had the energy to play that girl. I remember taking the tape over to Harrison's house that night and saying, look, I've got about 15, 20 girls on tape. I only want to show you one. And I put Kate in. No second choices for Harrison. He said, she's the one. And that's how Kate got cast.